Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cool Conversations with Sheera Lee. And tonight we have with us a renowned author, speaker, inspirational speaker. This man really has the gamut when it comes to not just publishing, but having an ear to listen and having the heart to minister. So we would like to welcome back to Cool Conversations, Paul Young. Paul, welcome to Cool Conversations.
Sheera, it's always an honor and a privilege to be with you.
Now, many of you all know him from his work from the Shack, which we're going to visit, of course. But he has an awesome project that is out right now. And I was talking to him prior to the live broadcast, how timely that this project is in this day and time, dealing with the pandemic and dealing with ministry. So, Paul, would you like to share the title of the book and give us a brief overview of the book?
So it's called The Pastor, A Crisis. And I wrote it with Brad Jerzak, who is a PhD theologian and a dear, dear, dear friend. And Brad and I both have experienced, great losses in our own life and addiction issues in our own lives. But we know a lot of people who've been really, really hammered and by losses of one sort or another. And so Brad has done a lot of nonfiction work. He's written a number of books. And if you ever want a good book about the conversation about hell, for example, he wrote a great book called Her Gates Will Never Be Shut, which is fantastic. And he wrote A More Christ-Like Way. He wrote Jesus, Can You Hear Me?, which is a children's book. But he's never gone into fiction. And so he asked, hey, if I begin to dabble in fiction, can we do this project together? And I went, yeah, of course. So the pastor is a composite character. That is, it's not Brad, it's not me, pastors are in a really tough position because we live in a world where performance orientation is so high, and in the religious community, it's high. And so pastors are oftentimes they became pastors for not good reasons, for the wrong reasons, for trying to perform their way into the affection of God, trying whatever. And a lot of people in that place are then isolated. It's hard for a pastor to be authentic. It's hard for a pastor to tell the truth about things in terms of their own lives. And because the whole system is designed to keep an image of what that role and position looks like. And a lot of pastors have been burned out and crashed and burned and things like that. And so we took a pastor who he's kind of a hellfire damnation pastor, and he has been preaching against sin, right? And a lot of times that kind of really extreme rhetoric is to cover one's own judgment against oneself, right?
Yeah.
And so the question that we're trying to deal with is two questions, really, because this person has created a life based on a persona that he believes is good and right, but it is created out of his own victimization and damage. So he has a false persona that then is empowered by his fiery message, but he's never dealt with his internal world. He hasn't dealt with the losses. He hasn't dealt with his own brokenness. And it's like, so for those of us who've been in that place, what does it take for us to begin to deal honestly and authentically with our own shadows? And some of us, we need a wrecking ball and a bulldozer to come into our life, and a lot of times we build the house of cards that then crashes around us. But some people are so fragile, they need a art restoration expert, somebody who can just slowly, it's like you have these old paintings, and they found a masterpiece recently by a very famous artist, but it had been painted over and covered over, and it took an art restorer to painstakingly move all that which is not true to reveal the masterpiece inside. And I think for some people, they are so hurt that they need someone to be very careful. But in the case of the pastor, that's not what he needs. He needs what I needed, and that was a bulldozer and a wrecking ball. And a lot of times it's because we're confronted by the choices that we made historically. So this character is not just a victim in his own history, but he's also a perpetrator, and along the way. And when he gets confronted with his past, he bails out emotionally. That is, he ends up in a psychiatric hospital in the psych wing, and then it's like, so one, what is the process of someone moving in the direction of wholeness, and two, is there anybody who is irredeemable, unforgivable? Wow. Right?
Yeah. Let me stop you right there, because you're dealing with some heavy subjects. You're dealing with ministry, which is always a heavy subject. You're dealing with mental illness, which we know is a heavy subject. And when you integrate those two together, a lot of people feel that pastors and people in leadership, they should be able to pray their way out. They should be able to fast their way out. So you're dealing with a lot of different subjects that are quite, to be honest with you, taboo in certain circles in all denominations of church.
Right.
So what led you and your co-author to go down this road when it comes to writing?
Because they are taboo, and it's time for us to get to the place where we're authentic and honest. You know, I have two of my cousins who both took their own lives because they struggled with schizophrenia. And so I know the mental illness side of this. And we have characters in this storyline that are not solely, but partially based on real people we know. In fact, there's dialogue in this that comes directly out of text message, and we have permissions to use them, but come directly out of text messages and conversations with people who've been very, very broken. In fact, the woman to whom we dedicated the book, Jackie, who's not the Jackie in the character Jackie in the book, mm-hmm. but the woman we dedicated to, you know, she, and we have permission to share her story too, but she was horribly abused growing up. She was regularly molested by her father, and actually had 2 abortions because of being impregnated by her father. And her father drove her to the abortion clinics to have the abortions. And so she has experienced like 30 years of addiction and anorexia covering up this, right? We don't talk about this much.
You don't.
And the reason why a lot of people want to pray their way out of this is because they don't want the exposure and the sense of humiliation. And one of the things that I'm convinced about in my own mind and heart, and from my own experience, that one of the kindnesses of the Holy Spirit is exposure, is not for the purpose of humiliation, but the unexposed. I don't know what that is. It's not me. The unexposed is the unhealed. So this is why secrets have to come into the light. This is why hidden things have to come into the light, because if it's not exposed, it's not going to be healed. And you know, here we are in a quarantine situation, yeah? And a lot of us have had some time to do some inner work or think about things that are on the inside. And in our relationships, it's like, are we going to begin to move in the direction of authenticity and openness and transparency? How are we supposed to know that there is a journey toward wholeness if nobody's willing to talk about it?
Wow. And I'm going to stop you right there again, because that is deep. Because people view wholeness, as some people view wholeness as being a church member, being a dedicated member, praying, fasting. They see that as wholeness, not holiness, but wholeness. And they don't even recall or remember what they look like because they're so broken. So when they look in the mirror, they see totally different things.
Yep.
And some people are different with different people, being your pastor or leadership or your family, because everybody's putting on all of these different faces and these different masks. And during this time, during this pandemic, that's when a lot of that, as you said earlier, or you referenced earlier, a lot of that has been unmasked, because when you're dealing with yourself on a day-to-day basis, sometimes you don't like what you see.
Or you're dealing with a spouse or a significant other,
Right.
or, the divorce rates going up, and, all kinds of things, because people have been busy with their religious life or their economic life, and it's a cover up to the kind of brokenness that actually exists in their relationships. And somebody says, if God didn't mean for us to use therapists, would not have given them the heart and the mind to do the job. And boy, Hannah, I agree with you. Part of the process of exposure is that you have to take the risk of trust. And a lot of us, we want God to heal us without anybody else finding out about it.
Wow.
And, it's like we have this persona that we know in our heart of hearts is not real, right? And we're covering up what we actually think about ourselves, which is usually we're totally depraved, we're a piece of crap, we're worthless, we're not worthy of being loved. And yet we need it. So we then perform our way into the affection and the approval of other people or of God. And at some point, that persona needs to be destroyed. There's this passage that in the New Testament that talks about this. And Jesus says, many will say to me on that day, we did miracles in your name. And we preached the gospel and cast out demons and all kinds of stuff. And I will say to them, I never knew you. Depart from me into everlasting destruction. Now, that is not about eternal conscious torment in hell. That verse, why would Jesus say that? Who is the author of love, who is incarnate love? He's saying, look, I don't build a real relationship with anybody that doesn't exist. And you have created a persona that isn't real. And you think that by doing the right things, that's a relationship, and it's not. So I want that false persona to be utterly and completely destroyed. Why? So that you and I can actually get to know each other, right?
Yeah.
And so there is this beautiful, hellish process, and this is why it's called the pastor a crisis. The word crisis in the English we got from the Greeks, and it's in the New Testament, and it's the word krisis, which is why we got the word crisis. But it is translated judgment, and there is a judgment process that we go through when we're going to deal with our stuff. And like someone said, religious people believe in hell, but spiritual people have been there. And let me say this too, because I think this is really important. I grew up modern evangelical fundamentalist holiness, and we had a picture of God as a judge in our minds, and it was delivered to us by our pastors and our teachers and all that. The early church, that is the first 500 years after Jesus was on the planet in physical form, they also had a God as a judge, but they never had the same judge that we do. We inherited our view of God as a judge from lawyers. Augustine was a lawyer, Calvin was a lawyer, Luther was a lawyer. And so when these lawyers tried to communicate what they thought about God, they created a courtroom scene because they're lawyers. And when you have a judge who's in a courtroom. And so in our minds, you go into the courtroom, and in this courtroom, you're guilty. You've hurt people, you've shaded the truth, so, and this is in that courtroom scene, this is the judge who knows everything anyway. So you go in there, and the judge is going to determine whether you're guilty or innocent, and then he's going to pass sentence. Now, when I grew up, passing sentence was eternal conscious torment. hellfire and damnation. And so it's like, that's the judgment. There's a bunch of problems with that. So you go in there but see, you're hoping that you have an ace in the hole named Jesus.
Amen.
See, but you think that he's your defense attorney, but only if you paid him, right? Because if you didn't pay him, he won't defend you. You'll end up in hell. So how do you pay Jesus? You pay Jesus by praying the sinner's prayer, which is only 150 years old. And the prayer itself, it's a modern thing. It's not an ancient thing at all. You don't find it anywhere in the Bible. And but that's what we think we do. And then Jesus will defend you by saying to the judge, who's his dad, right, his father, he'll say, I'm going to take his punishment. Not like for real. Like, he doesn't go to eternal conscious torment, right? He has to take the wrath of it. This is our view of God. The early church didn't have that view at all. They didn't see God as a judge in a courtroom. They had God as a judge, but they had a different name for him. He was called the Great Physician. And so it's a doctor hospital therapeutic model. Like Hannah was saying, it's a therapeutic model, right? So do you want to go see the judge in the courtroom? No. Do you want to go see the judge who's the doctor? Yes. Why? Because the job of the judge is to help you understand why you're broken and why you're sick. And so the judgment of the judge is a good judgment. And then what is the sentence of that judge? It's not eternal conscious torment. If you go to a doctor, the doctor is going to go like, okay, we're going to have to operate. We're going to have to take this wayward piece of tissue out of your body that's because it's killing you. Or here is a vaccine, or here are some antibiotics, or here's a cast for your arm, or, those are the sentences. But what's the point? The point is that the doctor is out to restore you back to wholeness, right? Yes. And so, and George MacDonald, who was a mentor for C.S. Lewis, he wrote a book, and in it he said, if you trust the goodness of God, you will run to God with your arms wide open and say, please come and judge me to the core and burn out of me everything that keeps me from being fully human and fully alive. And I believe that the love of God is a fiery fury as well as a gentle breeze, and that fury is not against me. It's against everything in my life that prevents me from being free. So every lie I believe, even if the false persona I think is me, God is out to destroy it because it's not, right?
Now you were talking earlier about the pastor and the crisis, and prior to the pandemic, church membership as a whole has really been down. And I must say myself, I don't have a church home. I'm a faith believer. I even tithe and give offerings, but I don't have a church home. And I think that so many people, as you said earlier, that torment, the judgment, which you speak a lot about in the shack, the judgment chair. And not that you want to be just willy-nilly in this world, but I think a lot of people are having conflict because they read their Bible, they study their Bible, yet instead what they see on Sunday sometimes doesn't align with what they read.
Yeah.
And that brokenness and that wholeness. And I've heard this in all my life. Hurt people, and hurt people pre-church. And they actually perform acts that hurt people in their congregation when they are not healed. So I know that I do have a lot of people in the leader ministry on my Facebook pages and things of that nature. How would you, what would you say to that leader, that minister leader? It may not be the pastor per se, but someone who's in ministry who is broken and who is trying to find that way and needs that assistance, as Hannah said earlier. Fiery fury, a gentle breeze, of people are quoting you. What would you say to that man or woman or God who needs that wholeness, needs that restoration?
You're going to have to come out of the dark, and if the only person that you can trust is someone you pay, start there, but at some point you've got to take the risk of beginning to trust the people in your own life to handle the brokenness. We've got to move in the direction of authenticity and begin to, which is a hard thing in an institutional structure, a religious system where you get, it's almost like a competition. And when a leading horse goes lame, there's almost a glee that happens in other people, like they're out of the race. And so because so many people are trying to find a sense of identity from their performance and what they do. So you've got to get help, and that's the hardest thing, to say to another human being, can you help me?
Can you help me?
Can you help me?
Yeah.
But at some point in the community of faith, we're going to start to have to tell the truth about our lives. How do we know that Jesus can come into the middle of our brokenness and bring healing unless somebody talks about it? Which means you've got to tell the story for the way that it is, and take the risk.
Take the risk. I see people saying, take the risk, be authentic. Authenticity is difficult in some religious institutions. I really agree with that.
There's hell to pay if you're authentic in a lot of religious institutions.
And you said earlier, when you're talking about leadership and you're talking about titles, sometimes people who are authentic and are transparent, sometimes they get a slap on the wrist and sometimes they get demoted. And sometimes that makes them feel less than, and other people look at them differently. So being authentic, in education, we have this model now of being intentional. And I think we also need to be intentional. Our messages need to be intentional, and we need to be intentional and real with the people in our church, because that way we see the forgiveness. We see, not just see and feel it. You have to feel it. It's an action word. And you feel those chains being broken. We often talk about chains being broken, but a lot of times, not just messages that are preached from the pulpit, but the messages that are in that institutionalized religion, like Norma Jarrett just shared. They do a lot to keep people in bondage. And this is not a church bashing session, children. People.
No, not at all.
Not that at all. But we're talking about being free. And in this book, where you have to get, and Shavonna has shared it, so I have it on the screen. Crisis, William Paul Young and his co-author. We're talking about people in crisis, and often we don't think about pastors, our leaders, of being in crisis, because we look for them for leadership, and they carry the brunt of everybody else's secrets. Everybody else's, a lot of their transgressions that people make, they tell them, so they carry a lot of weight on them. And this pastor, because he had some other issues, we don't want to share a lot, and you need to get the book, because he had issues himself. It didn't take a lot for his walls to crumble. So let's talk a little bit more about this in the characterization. Why do you feel now that it was important to write a story of this nature and share it with the public?
Partly because we know so many broken people, and we know the process that it takes, and the arduous hard work. And one of the things I would say to any leader is, what's more important to you, your wholeness or your job description?
Woo.
Right? And sadly, a lot of leaders will go, frankly, it's my job description. And so they will stay broken inside the performance, and they can hold it together for a while, but at some point something's going to crash, because you just can't live an inconsistent life like that. So for us, Brad and I, we said, okay, this is a little bit outside the bounds of what would be Christian fiction, right? It doesn't pull punches. The Shack didn't pull punches either, and it's like, but it's real. There's no gratuitous anything in it, but it's brutal. I have a friend who called me up and said, this book is beautifully brutal, and it's tough. Brad and I think that under 16, probably not a good idea. It's rough, because the language is the language of people who are broken and in that process. So it's it's important that even if we haven't been through that, we still sit in the seat of judgment over very broken people. And I don't want to do that with any pastor or leader in the faith community. Those people are put in a very difficult, almost untenable position. And the way the system works, where in the name of transparency, they can't tell the truth.
Mm.
In the name of authenticity, they still have to hide their stuff. They can't take the risk of just being absolutely dismantled if they shown vulnerability. And it's a horrible way to live.
It is. And some who have tried have been deemed and perceived as being weak. Or being not ready to lead and to pastor. And so many of them, as you said, they hide. And, I feel that in this day and time, especially dealing with the pandemic, and of course, a lot of churches aren't necessarily open to the capacity they were prior to the pandemic. So I feel that it probably has caused, not all, but maybe some leadership to question themselves in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think that this conversation, this message is important because we want to uplift our leaders in ministries and our pastors in ministries and the leadership at all, because they have a very difficult job. We don't even know what they see, what they hear, what the Holy Spirit reveals to them. So they have a very difficult job. And I would say I've been at fault many times of saying things, and just imagine, as we were going through your book, the weight that they carry and compounded with what they already have. That's why I think that this book is so timely and so important, especially in this season, if you will, and the pastor. So what do you want us as just lay people to receive from this book? And what would you want people in ministry, leaders in ministry, to receive from this book?
So probably one of the bottom lines is that which is hidden, that which is in the dark, that which is secret has got to come to light. And that's the only way that is the direction for wholeness, for healing and authenticity. Wholeness, which is where holiness comes from, right? Wholeness is rooted in the word holiness. Wholeness is when the way of your being matches the truth of your being.
So wait, gotta write that down. Gotta write that down. Let me tell you all, when you talk to Paul, you're gonna have so many tidbits. It's just it's unimaginable. You gotta write that down.
Wholeness is when the way of your being, that is how you live your life, the choices you make. The wholeness is when the way of your being matches or is an expression of the truth of your being. That's when your inside world and your outside world are integrated, right? So that you're not a different person with different people. You're the same person in every situation. So I'm not different when I'm with my grandkids as opposed to in a hotel room by myself or in the company of other people, right? Friends or people I don't know. And so the big question then is, what is the truth of my being? Because if wholeness is when the way of my being matches the truth of my being, what's the truth of my being? And here's where a lot of us were damaged as children. Through experiences and trauma, we were communicated that the truth of our being was we were worthless, we were alone, nobody had our back, and we're complete failures. Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, the Protestant Reformation guy, he had this line that said, the truth of our being is that we were snow-covered dung, right? Snow-covered dung. We're just pieces of crap. And I am absolutely opposed to that. I don't believe that's true at all. Because if that's the truth of our being, then everything is just covering up. Every righteous act, every act of kindness is actually contrary to the truth of our being, since all we are is worthless. I don't know if you've heard this.
Matrix.
Yeah,
Like we're in the matrix, essentially.
yeah, I don't know. So they call it original sin, or they call it you have a fallen nature, right?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Nature is about the truth of your being. And I mean, there's even a song that's out there these days that they sing that's like, you are good, there is nothing good in me. And I'm like,
Whoa.
that's a disaster song. And so you like what reinforces that kind of message deep into the soul of a human being? Well, it could be an absent parent, or parents who don't know how to love. It could be sexual abuse. It could be bullying. It could be all these messages we get that keep whispering to us, no, you're worthless. You don't matter. You're not enough. All the I am nots. I'm not beautiful. I'm not smart. I'm not a boy. I'm not whatever the I am nots are, and so then our theology comes along, and my theology said, yep, God thinks the same thing. You are snow-covered dung. And so it's just like, and then we're told, well, see, here's what Jesus does. He covers you up with his robe of righteousness so that, the truth of your being is hidden inside Jesus. Now, when you believe that the truth of your being is that you are a worthless piece of crap, then you're grateful that Jesus would cover you up and sneak you into heaven. And but it's not true. We're not snow-covered dung. We're dung-covered diamonds. That's the truth. We are made in the image and likeness of God. And when you start to understand the truth of your being, for example, everything that God is like, you're like. That is, you're kind and you're patient. And you by nature, in terms of the deepest truth of who you are, by nature, you are self-controlled. By nature, you are pure of heart. These are things that are true about you. So when somebody says, well, I'm just an impatient person. No, you act impatiently, but you're denying the truth of who you are. You're made in the image of God, and God is patient. And so therefore, the truth of your being is that you're patient. You're just believing a lie, or listening to shame, or listening to fear, and you're acting impatiently. You think that, your false persona needs self-promotion and self-protection, right?
This is good stuff right here. I agree, Norma. This is very good stuff. And and you keep addressing it over and over again. And you manifest all of this negativity that you are placing in your mind, these thoughts, because all of that carries vibes, and it's generational. As you were saying, with leadership, it also spills over in the congregation, and it becomes generational, and it becomes more traditional than even spiritual. It becomes traditional. And a lot of things that we do in tradition, even in our families, in our communities, are not so much spiritually based, but they're traditionally based. And a lot of times they can have severe consequences.
So as a person thinks in their heart, so are they. That means even if what they think is a lie. So you become an expresser of what you believe to be and what you trust is true about you. So if you think you're a piece of crap, and that's the bottom line, then you're going to self-protect, or you're going to become an addict to cover up your shame, or you're going to try to deflect, or you're going to become violent in order for not to act out how you think about yourself. But it's not true. So as a person thinks in their heart, the way of their being will express it. And you can hide it in different ways, but at some point, that kind of poison will always find a way to leak out. You'll get involved in an affair, or you'll become an addict to one thing or another. And it's because at the core of your being, you don't think you have any value. And when you think you're a piece of garbage, you will begin to act like one eventually, and you'll begin to let people treat you like one, right?
You freed somebody right there. You just freed people right there with that one, which is true.
And it's like, that's not the truth of who you are. And see, what we do is that we're hoping we can find somebody that will tell us something good about us. And so now we're back to performance, and we become whatever we think that person needs us to be so that we can get, some kind of a attaboy or high five, or you've done a good job. And, but for those of us, even with deep shame rooted in our lives, which was my story, we really want that affection and a sense of belonging. We want to be seen, we want to be known. But if somebody gives us a compliment, it's almost like a curse, because now we think that there's new expectations we have to live up to. It's like, great, and so for some of us, we just rather not do anything and just like, curl up into a ball and emotionally die. And it's like, no, come on. We're made for an abundant life, not for this. But how can that be? Well, you've got some work to do. And the work is inner work. You've got to address the lies that have dominated your life. And you've got to stop getting your sense of identity from external sources.
Woo.
You've got to find internal resources that tell you the truth about who you are. And this is where my relationship with Jesus becomes absolutely central, because I trust that Jesus will tell me the truth about who I am. I trust, because people will tell me what they need to for their own false personas. A lot of the conflict, and there is injustice in the world, no question about it. But a lot of the conflict that you're seeing on the streets. We have a son who's a Portland police officer, and in the middle of the riots and stuff that are happening now for over 100 days, and where people are literally trying to, it's awful stuff, Molotov cocktails and shooting ball bearings, and it's violent, right? And that tension is out there. But what happens a lot is when one person who doesn't know who they are meets another person who doesn't know who they are, and they begin defending their false identities. And they always end up moving in the direction of violence, because false identities will always self-promote and self-protect. And so it's like, so who's going to tell me the truth about who I am? And if you don't find somebody who is objective and a truth teller, you're not going to find out. And so I can go to Jesus in my inside world and I go like, so tell me again who I am. Oh, I'm a child of God. Okay, I'm a child of Papa God. All right. So I'm struggling with this particular issue or that. And it's like, yeah, you are. Because you're listening to lies. You're listening to accusations about the truth of who you are. Let me tell you the truth of who you are. Let me tell you, Sheera, the truth of who you are. You by nature are good. And you're kind. And you're patient. And you're long-suffering. And you're a forgiver. And you are furious at anything that harms those you love. And I mean, I'm just describing the character and nature of God that you were made in the image of, right? Mm-hmm. You are pure of heart. You are a person of self-control. You're a being of self-control. Because if you don't know these things that are true about you, you'll adopt some other external form. So we'll replace self-control with self-discipline. And now we need the law of self-discipline on the outside that through guilt and shame gets me to behave properly, because I got nothing on the inside that can do that, right? So again, when you begin to realize who you are and the truth of who you are, you can live from the inside out, not from the outside in. We're not designed to live from the outside in. The intention of the law that was written on stone was that it eventually would be written on human hearts, which transcends the law, and it's like, yeah, I by nature am a lover of people, that I care about people by nature. And what covers that up? false identity, the need to protect and promote, the the lies that I believe about myself that aren't true, and so it's like, well, okay, the work of the Holy Spirit is pretty immense. The Holy Spirit, without harming you, has to climb inside your inside world and begin to eradicate the things which are not of love's kind, all the lies, all the accusations, and that ripples out into the world.
I'm going to ask you a question because people are going to ask me this. How do people get there? Because it seems, and I'm going to tell you, when you were saying that to me earlier, I feel like a peace and a calmness that really came over me. I'm not just saying that, but seriously, it was a peace and a calmness. And it seems so easy, but it's very hard. I'm going to tell you, it's hard for me to take compliments. Anyone who knows me, Cassandra, Hannah, or Tracy, they all know that of me. So how do people get there to that point? I know people say mantras and I have affirmations, but I can't say I do them daily, to be honest with you. How do people get to that point where they're able? What steps? If you had like just one step where you were able to say those things, just one positive thing, because God is, that you can say that about yourself, or you can feel that way about yourself. If you had one step for people who are hesitant, what is that first step they should take?
Listen to the deepest longings of your own heart. And I can tell you what they're not. They're not to be dishonest. They're not to harm people. They're not to be a brutal presence inside of the relationships. They're not to be a hider. They're not to keep secrets. I guarantee you, you might think that you need to keep secrets, but that's a safety mechanism. That's a survival skill. Right? So beneath the survival skills, what's the deepest longings? You want to be authentic. I know it. You want to be a person whose inside world is congruent with their outside world. You want to be someone trustworthy. That's what you want. You want to love well, right? These are the deepest longings. And one of those things for me is I can look at Jesus and go like, if Jesus is like this, so am I. That is the truth of my being. If he is kind to strangers, if he touches the leper, if he plays with children, if these are all things that are true, and I'm made that way, and that contradicts the messaging that I've adapted through my whole life. How do we get there? Sometimes it's a crisis, like the pastor has, and sometimes it's the slow movement of relationships that we allow to begin to question why we do what we do, because the lies have to be unearthed. There has to be exposure, and we're terrified of it because we're terrified of humiliation. But here's the deal: the shack is the picture of the shack is that's the house on the inside that people have helped us build. So that becomes, for some of us, a broken place because we didn't get good help. And so we then begin to store our addictions in the shack. We begin to hide our secrets in the shack. That's the house of shame and the house of lies. And what we do to survive is that we build a persona outside the shack, a facade, which they use in movie making that looks like a building, but it's not really a building. It's just a thin piece of plywood, And so we build on this piece of plywood. Because we can paint a picture of ourselves as fast as we can pick up people's expectations, right? So I become a different thing depending on the audience.
That is dangerous. That is so dangerous.
But it's so common, right? So we're with our one group, then we're like this, but we're with another group, we're like this, and it doesn't mean that that we don't move and flex and dance within the communities that we find ourselves. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually representing ourselves as different things to different people. Mm-hmm. And so at some point, the facade has got to come down. And for some of times it's a crisis. Like my life, it was a crisis. It was when Kim caught me in a 3-month affair with one of her best friends. That was a
Yep.
crisis.
Yeah, there would be a crisis. There most definitely.
That's a crisis. And the choice at that point was to either face her and face myself or kill myself. That was my only choice at that point. And that started an 11-year journey of reconciliation with Kim, and which I thought was going to take forever times 10. And but she and I just celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary, and we're the best we've ever been. But we lost things in that journey, and she paid a high price for my healing, and not a fair one at all. And so, but again, that was a crisis. And up to that point, I was trying to do the right thing. I was trying to be the right person. I've always had a pursuit of God in my life. Nothing else made any sense. But I wanted to do it without having to deal with the shack. I didn't want to go there, and I didn't want to invite anybody there, because I thought, if I let somebody know what I'm really like, the truth of my being, I'm going to see the look of disgust on their face that I see in the mirror. That's what I'm terrified of. And we don't want to be exposed. And yet, the job of the Holy Spirit, one of the main works of the Holy Spirit, is to convict. And that Greek word is to expose. And when it says, the things you've done in secret will be shouted from the rooftops, we always took that as a promise of humiliation. Like, people are going to find out. But it is a promise of redemption, that the dark things, the secrets, they have to come out into the light, because that is the path toward healing.
You know what? As you were talking, I can recall just personally some incidents, things that were exposed, or just people I know that things were exposed, and I will say that's when you saw the transformation. Not everyone, I would say, but I was just thinking you were totally right. Then that's when you see the transformation. A lot of times people are freed. Their personality is changed in the positive tone.
And they become more real.
You become real. And just like when you came to my event last year, and there were a couple of people who were who given their testimonies because you were giving the gift, because it was a gift, to talk to people in a way that was not abrasive, but it was what they needed, and it was exposure, and they felt free. It was one person told me that 20 years of shame had been lifted off of them.
Come on. And thank you, Holy Spirit. We will have more, please. And that's authenticity breeds authenticity. And that's why we struggle, so many of us, inside religious organizations, because it seems like you have to check the truth at the door.
Yes, and you have to check so many boxes. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to wear this. You can't say that. And we know, even at work, there are certain parameters that you have to stay within. But a lot of that, as you said earlier, are not biblically. They are tradition. And a lot of them are my opinion, your opinion, what you think, what your mama think, what someone 2 generations said before. And they constantly keep people in bondage. Yep. It's bondage when God commands us to be free.
Yeah. And you can tell where you're at in this journey of trust, because it is a journey of learning how to trust. And for a lot of us who've been broken young, we really struggle with trust. Even, our image of God is so distorted that God doesn't seem to be trustworthy and not good all the time. And so the process of trust is the life's journey. And you can tell where you are in terms of God is how much you worry and are anxious, because when it comes to fear in our lives, and let me tell you, we've had a year where the invitation to fear is unparalleled in terms of my life.
Daily. I would say daily, but it's almost hourly. If you look at the news.
Well, see, there's the thing. We're letting social media and news tell us how to think about everything. And it's fear-based. Everybody's freaking out. And to the degree that there is fear in your life, to that degree, you don't know yet how much you're loved. That's what 1 John says. The one who fears is not perfected in love. There is no fear in love, right? Perfect love casts out fear.
Yeah.
And even neurologically, we know that in the brain, when it comes to fear and love, it's either or. It's not both and. It's like you're either going to move in the direction of love or you're going to move in the direction of fear. And so and that's not an accusation when it says that the one who fears is not perfected in love. That's a description of where you're at. So to the degree that fear exists in your life, to that degree, you don't know yet how much you're loved. Right? As you begin to embrace the reality of God's affection, relentless and present for you, the fear will dissipate to the degree of that awareness. And so set your mind on these things, the good and the right and the beautiful, rather than fear and shame. You know, we do have to deal with our history. We do have to go walk back into it because it's formed some of the sound that we make today. And so, you know, dealing with issues of the past are important. That's why therapists are a great gift. And so are so many of the healing modalities that exist on the planet, I think, are just authored in very fundamental ways by the love of God. You know, like AA. AA has saved millions of people's lives. And AA has also taught the community of Christianity to how to have a small group, you know, because they're all about telling the truth, right? Yeah. And about accountability and being in each other's lives and not judgmental and all of those things. There is a clarity in an AA group that is sorely lacking in many Christian communities, you know, and because there is judgment, there is, you know, competition there, but there isn't in many healing communities. And so it's like, all right, let's pay attention and learn how to be the presence of healing and love and kindness in each other's lives, rather than judgment and abrasiveness and hiddenness and secrets. And, you know, let's come into the light. So, because we are children of light, that's the truth of our being.
Light. You've given us so many great tidbits. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recall The Shack and reminisce. The Shack is probably one of the best-selling books of all time. And it's probably one of the books that people, regardless of your demographic, where you are, who you are, what you read, what you don't read, there's a common factor. People who read the Bible read The Shack. People who never held a Bible read The Shack. People who aren't readers have read The Shack. And it has been an instrument and a catalyst of moving a lot of people forward in grief and forgiveness and judgment.
Yep.
So that being said, what similarities can you draw from the crisis in The Shack? Are there similarities that people will receive as part of messaging? Absolutely.
So if anybody is familiar with Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, The Handmaid's Tale, The Pastor, A Crisis is The Handmaid's Tale meets The Shack. and so Margaret is such a wonderful novelist, and she doesn't pull punches either. And yet her work is highly redemptive. And so is this. This is a dark story because it's a real one. But it's absolutely embedded with hope. We've had people who've been reading it or listening to the audiobook, which is off the hook. I mean, the audiobook is done with voice actors. It's almost like listening to a theater play. And it's really helpful. And this is a novella, so it's not like a full-length novel. To listen to the audiobook only takes like 3.5 hours. But I've had friends who contact me after chapter 8 and go like, "This is really difficult," and Brad has too, and he says, "Just keep reading, just keep reading." You know, I got a note from my sister who was listening to the audiobook, and she just dropped me a note yesterday, and she says to me, I'm at the ferry, and I just arrived at the ferry, and I just finished reading the book. And she says, chapters 13, 14, and 18 made me bawl like a baby. Can't believe I've never listened to an audiobook before. This is absolutely amazing. And so we're getting the ripple effects already. So it's like, all right, if you've never been traumatized and harmed deeply, thank God. I am so grateful for that being real in your life. And if you haven't, this will help you understand some of us who have. And if you have experienced that kind of loss, this will help you understand yourself. We had the Spanish translator contact us because Brad and I were saying, well, this is really not for everybody, maybe. And he contacted us, not knowing we were having that conversation. He said, I want you to understand that everybody who reads this book, they will be able to identify. They will be able to identify both with the pain side and with the hope side. And that was a real encouragement to us because, anybody in the therapeutic community, they're going to understand this book very, very well. It's taken right out of the lives of people that we know who've really experienced loss and trauma, and also the redemptive processes.
And that's what we need right now. We need hope, because we all, believe in one way or another. This year has been traumatic. Some people have suffered great losses, financially, personally, some of the above, emotionally, and even spiritually. We've taken hits here and there. And anyone who has experienced these things also need hope, because even, you were talking about love and fear, and it really did, I will say, minister to me. I'm going to be quite honest, like be intentional, being transparent. It really did minister to me. And I hope it also ministered to other people. But that the realness of knowing that God is God, and regardless of what's going on, we have to operate, and we need to keep feeling that love. And so I'm glad that you were able to reiterate that, to let us know that. And we need books of this nature, because, I know that's right. Let the light come through. That's right, Renee. I'm reading the comments. We are children of the light. And we have to be reminded of that we are children of the light.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, Sheera, are you a child of God?
Yes, I am.
I am too. Look at that. Right? So we belong to the same family. And,
yes.
and that means that the way forward for us, not just you and me, but for our communities and for our culture and everything else, is toward, not away. The way forward is toward each other, right? And it's to do that. It's to go like, oh my God, look, a child of God. And it doesn't matter at that point the color of the skin. The color of skin matters because it's part of the texture of what it means to be human, right? I carry in the lines of my face the grief and the smiles that I've borne over my lifetime. And if you want to know where those lines come from, just ask me for my story, right? And so on a flat screen, on a video screen, it's just two-dimensional. But in story and in face-to-face, now you begin to tap into the multidimensionality of who this child of God is, and it's holy ground. Mm-hmm. And so we have forgotten that we belong to each other.
We do. And our time is up. I'd like to thank Paul. Please, please, please go out and purchase his new book. It's available on Amazon. Shavonna was kind enough, what she always is. She shared the link. Let me go back and find her. We got a lot of comments in here. So here we go. Share the link. And if you would be so kind to purchase it today, I'm sure that you will be pleased. And I'm sure that Paul will be pleased, and his co-author. And if you would like to also purchase a copy for one of your friends, for a friend, a frenemy, or any of the above, because we need hope, and we need authenticity at this point in time. And Paul, thank you ever so much for your time.
Absolutely.
And from my reading chair from yours, and from my bookshelf to yours,
from my heart to yours.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.